There is a silence in the far north that feels almost sacred. It settles over the land like a soft veil, wrapping itself around frozen fjords, snow-covered peaks, and endless forests locked in winter's stillness. The air is sharp, crystalline, each breath visible, each sound softened, as if the world itself is holding its breath. And then, the sky begins to move. At first, it is barely there. A faint glow like a distant memory of light lingering on the horizon. But slowly, gently, it grows. A ribbon of green unfurls across the darkness, trembling as though alive. It stretches, bends, and deepens, joined by shades of violet and pale white, forming vast, shifting curtains that ripple across the heavens. This is the moment. The Arctic reveals its secret. Above the northern reaches of Norway, where winter nights can last for weeks, the Aurora Borealis transforms the sky into something almost unreal. It reflects across still waters, dances above jagged mountains, and casts an otherworldly glow upon the snow below. There is no sound to accompany it, no thunder, no wind, only light, moving, breathing, alive. For those who stand beneath it, time seems to slow. The vastness of the sky, the quiet of the land, and the brilliance above create a moment that feels both intimate and infinite. It is not just something you see, it is something you feel. A reminder that in the darkest corners of our world, there exists a beauty so profound, so unexpected, that it defies explanation, and invites us simply to look up and wonder. Northern Norway is a land sculpted by ice, shaped by time and defined by contrasts that feel almost otherworldly. Stretching deep into the Arctic Circle, this region is where raw natural forces have carved one of the most dramatic landscapes on Earth. The coastline alone tells a story millions of years in the making. It twists and fractures into thousands of islands, peninsulas, and inlets, forming the iconic fjords for which Norway is known. These fjords, deep, narrow arms of the sea, were carved by massive glaciers during the last ice age. As the ice retreated, it left behind steep cliffs that plunged directly into cold, dark waters, creating scenes of breathtaking scale and quiet power. Among the most famous of these regions are the Lofoten Islands, where jagged peaks rise dramatically from the ocean, and small fishing villages cling to the edges of land and sea. Here the Arctic feels alive, constantly shifting between calm beauty and untamed force. Further north lies Tromso, often called the gateway to the Arctic. Surrounded by mountains and fjords, it sits beneath one of the most active auroral zones on Earth, making it a focal point for those seeking the northern lights. Yet beyond its role as a viewing point, Tromso reflects the balance between human life and the surrounding wilderness. Inland, the terrain becomes quieter but no less striking. Rolling tundra stretches toward the horizon, broken by frozen rivers and scattered forests of hardy birch trees. During winter, snow blankets everything, softening the sharp edges of the land. In this silence, even the smallest movement, a drifting snowflake, a distant animal track, feels significant. One of the defining features of this region is its relationship with light. In winter, the sun disappears below the horizon for extended periods, creating what is known as the polar night. For weeks, sometimes months, daylight never fully arrives. Instead, a dim twilight hovers for a few hours each day, casting the landscape in shades of deep blue and soft gray. But this darkness is not empty, it is transformative. Without sunlight, the sky becomes a canvas for stars and auroras, revealing a hidden layer of the universe that remains invisible in brighter regions of the world. Then, in summer, the cycle reverses. The midnight sun rises, and the sun no longer sets. For weeks, daylight is constant, illuminating the land in a golden glow that seems to stretch time itself. Snow melts, rivers flow, and life returns with quiet determination. This rhythm of darkness and light, of stillness and motion, defines Northern Norway. It is a place where nature operates on its own terms, where landscapes feel both ancient and alive, and where every element, from the mountains to the sky, contributes to a sense of scale that is both humbling and awe-inspiring. The Northern Lights, for all their beauty, are the result of a powerful cosmic interaction, an invisible exchange of energy between the sun and the earth that unfolds high above our heads. It begins at the surface of the sun. Far from being calm, the sun is a dynamic and volatile sphere, constantly releasing streams of charged particles into space. These particles, primarily electrons and protons, travel outward in what is known as the solar wind, moving at speeds that can exceed millions of kilometers per hour. When this solar wind reaches Earth, it encounters an invisible but vital shit, the planet's magnetic field. Earth's magnetic field acts like a protective shield, deflecting most of these charged particles and guiding them around the planet. But near the poles, the field lines curve inward, creating openings through which these particles can enter the upper atmosphere. As they are funneled toward the polar regions, particularly above northern areas like Tromso, they collide with gases in the atmosphere, primarily oxygen and nitrogen. These collisions are not destructive. Instead, they are transformative. When charged particles strike atoms in the atmosphere, they transfer energy, exciting the atoms and pushing their electrons into higher energy states. As these electrons return to their normal levels, they release that excess energy in the form of light. This light is what we see as the aurora. Different gases produce different colors. Oxygen, when excited at higher altitudes, emits a rare red glow. At lower altitudes, it produces the more common green light that dominates most auroral displays. Nitrogen adds blues and purples, creating the full spectrum of shimmering colors that ripple across the sky. But the aurora is not static. It is constantly moving, shifting in response to the flow of solar particles and the structure of Earth's magnetic field. Sometimes, the lights appear as soft arcs stretching from horizon to horizon. At other times, they form dynamic curtains, twisting, folding, and cascading like waves of light. During periods of intense solar activity, known as geomagnetic storms, the aurora can become especially vivid, filling the sky with rapid, dramatic motion. Even now, scientists continue to study the finer details of this phenomenon. Questions remain about how certain shapes form, why some displays are more intense than others, and how variations in solar activity influence what we see on Earth. Yet despite this growing understanding, the Northern Lights have not lost their sense of mystery. Because while we can explain the process, the particles, the collisions, the physics, we cannot fully capture the experience. Standing beneath an aurora is not like observing a scientific event. It feels like witnessing something alive. The Arctic climate of Northern Norway is often imagined as a place of unrelenting cold, but in reality, it is a finely balanced system shaped by forces both local and global. One of the most defining influences is the warm branch of the Gulf Stream. Flowing along Norway's western coast, it carries heat from the tropics into the Arctic, softening what would otherwise be far harsher conditions. Because of this, coastal regions remain surprisingly moderate for their latitude, with ice-free waters even in the depths of winter. Yet winter still dominates the rhythm of life here. Temperatures frequently fall below freezing, and snow blankets the land for months at a time. Storms roll in from the sea, bringing strong winds that reshape the landscape overnight, carving drifts, covering tracks, and reminding all living things of nature's quiet authority. During the polar night, when the sun does not rise for weeks, the environment enters a state of suspended animation. Energy is conserved. Movement slows. Life adapts to darkness as much as it does to cold. Then almost suddenly the balance shifts. With the arrival of spring and the return of sunlight, the Arctic awakens. Snow begins to melt. Rivers break free from ice, and a short but intense growing season begins. In summer, under the midnight sun, life accelerates. Plants grow rapidly, animals reproduce, and ecosystems pulse with activity in a race against time. The dominant biome here is the tundra, an environment defined by low temperatures, limited vegetation, and permafrost, a layer of permanently frozen ground beneath the surface. Because roots cannot penetrate deeply, plants remain small and close to the ground, forming a dense but low-lying carpet of mosses, lichens, and shrubs. Despite its apparent simplicity, this ecosystem is incredibly sensitive. Even small changes in temperature or precipitation can disrupt the delicate balance. A slightly warmer season may alter plant growth cycles, which in turn affects herbivores and ultimately the predators that depend on them. In the Arctic, everything is connected. Every season, every shift in light, every degree of temperature plays a role in maintaining a system that has evolved over thousands of years. It is a world where survival depends not on dominance, but on adaptation, and where even the smallest change can echo across the entire landscape. At first glance, the Arctic landscapes of northern Norway may seem stark and lifeless. But beneath the snow and across the windswept tundra exists a resilient web of life, one that has adapted to some of the harshest conditions on Earth. Plant life here is defined by endurance. With a growing season that lasts only a few short weeks, vegetation must act quickly. Mosses and lichens dominate the terrain, thriving where few other plants can survive. These organisms require minimal nutrients and can endure extreme cold, clinging to rocks and soil like a living skin over the land. Low shrubs, grasses, and hardy flowering plants emerge during summer, taking advantage of the constant daylight brought by the midnight sun. For a brief moment, the tundra bursts into color, tiny blossoms of purple, yellow, and white spreading across the landscape in a quiet but determined display of life. Animal life, too, reflects this need for adaptation. The reindeer, known locally as caribou, moves across vast distances in search of food, following ancient migration routes that shift with the seasons. Its thick fur provides insulation, while its wide hooves allow it to travel over snow and dig through it to reach lichen below. Predators such as the Arctic fox embody survival in its purest form. Small, resourceful, and incredibly resilient, the Arctic fox changes its coat with the seasons. White in winter for camouflage, brown in summer to blend with the earth. It survives on whatever it can find, from small mammals to scraps left behind by larger predators. Bird life flourishes during the warmer months. Seabirds gather in massive colonies along cliffs and islands, feeding on the rich marine life of the surrounding waters. The seasonal abundance of fish supports a complex food web that extends from the smallest plankton to the largest marine mammals. In the icy waters off the coast, life continues beneath the surface. Fish thrive in the cold currents, while seals and whales navigate the fjords, relying on the ocean's productivity for survival. Every species here is part of a delicate balance. There is little room for excess, no margin for waste. Each organism plays a role, contributing to an ecosystem where efficiency and adaptation are the keys to survival. And in this harsh, unforgiving environment, life does not merely endure. It persists, evolves, and in its own quiet way, thrives. Long before science traced the origins of the northern lights to solar winds and magnetic fields, the people of the North looked to the sky and saw something far more personal, something alive with meaning. In the ancient traditions of Scandinavia, the aurora was woven into the fabric of myth. To the Norse, the shimmering lights were often believed to be reflections from the armor of celestial warriors. The most enduring of these tales speaks of the Valkyries, powerful female figures who rode across the sky, choosing which fallen warriors would be carried to the halls of the afterlife. As they moved, their shields and armor caught the light, casting brilliant reflections that danced across the heavens. Other stories imagined the aurora as a bridge between worlds, a glowing pathway linking the realm of humans to that of the gods. In a culture deeply connected to both nature and the unseen, such interpretations were not merely symbolic, they were deeply felt truths. But not all beliefs were comforting. In some traditions, the lights were seen as omens or spirits, unpredictable and potentially dangerous. People were warned not to draw attention to them, not to whistle, not to wave, lest the lights notice and descend closer to the earth. This sense of caution reveals a deeper respect, even fear, of the unknown forces that shaped their world. These myths were not created in isolation. They were born from a landscape where darkness could last for months, where the sky itself seemed alive, and where the line between reality and imagination often blurred. Even today, the Northern Lights hold cultural significance in Northern Norway. They are a source of identity, a connection to heritage, and a reminder of the stories that once helped people understand their place in the universe. Modern festivals, art, and storytelling continue to draw inspiration from the aurora, blending ancient beliefs with contemporary perspectives. And while science has explained the mechanics behind the lights, it has not erased their emotional power. Because when the sky begins to shimmer, when green and violet waves ripple silently above, it is easy to understand why earlier generations saw something more than physics. They saw meaning, they saw presence, and perhaps, in some quiet, unspoken way, long before maps were complete and satellites traced the contours of the Earth, the Arctic North remained a place of mystery, vast, silent, and largely unknown to the outside world. Yet it was never truly empty. For thousands of years, indigenous peoples such as the Sami people lived across the northern regions of Norway, developing a deep understanding of the land, its rhythms, and its challenges. Their knowledge of migration routes, weather patterns, and survival in extreme conditions formed the earliest foundation of Arctic exploration. As centuries passed, curiosity drew others northward. During the Viking Age, Norse seafarers pushed into these cold waters, navigating rugged coastlines and unpredictable seas. Among them was Eric the Red, whose journeys across the North Atlantic symbolized a broader spirit of exploration that defined the era. Though their primary focus extended beyond Norway, these voyages demonstrated that even the harshest environments could be crossed with skill and determination. In later centuries, the Arctic became a stage for scientific and geographic discovery. Expeditions ventured into the far north in search of new trade routes, including the elusive Northeast Passage. These journeys were fraught with danger, ships trapped in ice, crews facing starvation, and the constant threat of freezing temperatures. Despite these hardships, exploration continued. Figures such as Roald Amundsen brought global attention to the polar regions. Known for his successful expedition to the South Pole, Amundsen also played a key role in Arctic exploration, navigating icy waters and advancing techniques for survival in extreme climates. These explorations were not only about conquest or discovery, they were about understanding. Each journey added to a growing body of knowledge about the Arctic's geography, climate, and ecosystems. But exploration also brought change. New technologies, outside influence, and increased contact with the region began to reshape traditional ways of life. The Arctic, once isolated, became part of a broader global network. And yet, despite centuries of exploration, the Arctic has never fully surrendered its mystery. It remains a place where the unknown still lingers, where even today, the horizon invites questions as much as it offers answers. In the modern era, Northern Norway has become a destination not only for exploration, but for experience. Each year, travelers from around the world journey into the Arctic Circle, drawn by the promise of witnessing the Northern Lights. Towns such as Tromso have transformed into gateways to this phenomenon, offering a blend of accessibility and proximity to some of the most active auroral zones on Earth. But tourism here is not defined by crowds or spectacle. Instead, it is shaped by immersion. Visitors are invited to step into the landscape, to travel across snow-covered terrain by sled, to sail through silent fjords, and to stand beneath vast open skies untouched by artificial light. The experience is as much about stillness and solitude as it is about seeing the aurora itself. At the same time, Norway has positioned itself at the forefront of Arctic research. Facilities such as the Norwegian Polar Institute play a critical role in studying the region's environment, climate systems, and atmospheric phenomena. Scientists monitor solar activity, track changes in ice and ecosystems, and gather data that contributes to a global understanding of how the Arctic is evolving. The Northern Lights themselves are a subject of ongoing study. Advanced instruments measure their intensity, structure, and interaction with Earth's magnetic field, helping researchers better understand space weather and its potential impact on modern technology. What makes Norway unique is its balance. Tourism and research exist side by side, supported by policies that emphasize sustainability and environmental responsibility. Efforts are made to minimize ecological impact while still allowing people to experience the region's beauty. In this way, Northern Norway becomes more than a destination. It becomes a meeting point, where curiosity meets responsibility, where wonder meets knowledge, and where the ancient rhythms of the Arctic continue to shape modern human experience. The Arctic, for all its beauty and resilience, is one of the most vulnerable regions on Earth. In northern Norway, the effects of climate change are already visible. Temperatures are rising at a rate significantly faster than the global average, altering the delicate balance that has defined this environment for thousands of years. Ice is retreating. Glaciers shrink year by year, and sea ice forms later in winter while melting earlier in spring. This not only reshapes the physical landscape, but also disrupts ecosystems that depend on stable conditions. Species that rely on ice for hunting or migration face increasing challenges, while others are forced to adapt to rapidly changing habitats. Permafrost, once permanently frozen, is beginning to thaw. As it does, it releases stored greenhouse gases, further accelerating global warming in a feedback loop that scientists are only beginning to fully understand. For the Sami people, these changes are deeply personal. Traditional ways of life, especially reindeer herding, are affected by shifting weather patterns, altered migration routes, and unpredictable seasonal cycles. Even the skies are not untouched. While the Northern Lights themselves are driven by solar activity, the clarity of the atmosphere and the conditions required to observe them can be influenced by broader environmental changes. The Arctic has often been described as a warning signal, a place where the future of the planet becomes visible first. And in its changing ice, its shifting ecosystems, and its uncertain seasons, it quietly asks a question. What kind of world are we shaping? And how much of this fragile beauty are we willing to lose? In the far north of Norway, where silence stretches across frozen fjords and darkness lingers for months, the sky continues its quiet, eternal performance. The Northern Lights do not belong to any one place or time. They are ancient, older than human memory, yet they remain ever-changing, never repeating themselves in quite the same way. Each appearance is fleeting, each movement unrepeatable. And perhaps that is why they matter. Because in a world that moves quickly, that seeks to measure, explain, and control, the aurora reminds us of something simpler. That not everything needs to be understood to be meaningful, that some experiences exist only to be felt. Beneath those shifting waves of green and violet, people have stood for centuries, explorers, storytellers, scientists, and dreamers, all united by the same quiet sense of awe. The science may explain how the lights are born. History may tell us who first followed them. But neither can fully capture what it means to stand beneath them, to look up, to be still, and to realize that above us, the universe is not silent, but alive with light.